Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Aura. Think about the number of spam calls or texts you receive each day. Have you ever found yourself second-guessing whether a message was real or a scam? What about a time when you were waiting for an important call? Did you end up answering every unknown number just in case? How did that experience make you feel? With the Data Broker opt-out feature, Aura will help remove your personal information from data brokers and people search sites that can sell your info to identity thieves, scammers, and more. Aura has tons of identity protection features such as Data Broker opt-out, financial fraud protection, Aura VPN, antivirus, certified data security and privacy, identity theft protection, and password manager. Plus, Aura will never sell your data to third parties. 24/7 US-based support around-the-clock US fraud specialists are available to help. I personally love the antivirus and password manager. As someone who forgets their passwords often, Aura makes it easy to store and access your online passwords securely and conveniently across apps. I get this all in one app at one affordable price. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches and brokers, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/KrystlynCrime to try a 2 weeks free trial. That will be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed. Thanks again to Aura for sponsoring this video. Durham White Stevens was born and raised in Washington, D.C. He attended Oberlin College in Ohio as an undergraduate and graduated in 1871. Stevens returned to Washington, D.C. to study law at Columbia University and Howard University. He was admitted to the District of Columbia Bar Association in 1873 alongside notable peers such as Joseph E. Lee, Jacksonville's first black lawyer Henry Wagner, U.S. Consul in Lyons, France William E. Matthews, John S. Leary, J. H. Smith, and John A. Moss. Later that year, his career with the Department of State began when President Ulysses S. Grant appointed him Secretary of the United States Legation in Tokyo. There, he served under John Bingham, the U.S. Minister to Japan, who had known Stevens' father, E. L. Stevens. Both father and son were Oberlin College graduates and shared a legacy of anti-slavery advocacy, a cause also championed by Bingham. Stevens eagerly embraced his new role, motivated in part by his passion for learning languages, having previously studied Latin, Greek, French, and German. Initially one of only 3 staff members at the legation, he served as secretary until July 1883 and acted as charge d'affaires ad interim during Bingham's home leave in 1878. After resigning in 1883, Stevens returned to the United States. In November of 1883, Stevens began working for the Japanese government as an English secretary to the Imperial Legation in Washington, a position secured through the influence of his former superior, John Bingham, with the Japanese government. In 1884, he was assigned to Tokyo to serve in the Foreign Office. During the winter of 1884 or 1885, he accompanied Count Inoue Kaoru to Korea to assist in negotiations following the murder of several Japanese citizens. For his contributions during this mission, Emperor Meiji honored him with the 3rd class of the Order of the Rising Sun. From 1885 to 1887, Stevens served as Bureau de Protocol at a Tokyo conference focused on renegotiating unequal treaties imposed on Japan by Western powers. After the conference, he returned to Washington, D.C. with the rank of Honorary Counselor of Legation, serving under Count Mutsu Minamitsu, Japanese Minister of the United States. During this time, Stevens played a key role in negotiating a treaty with Mexico, making Japan's first agreement that fully recognized its sovereign powers as an independent state. At the onset of the First Sino-Japanese War, Stevens published an article in the North American Review defending Japan's position. He argued that China's resistance to modernization hindered Korea's development, and that reducing Chinese influence in Korea while increasing Japanese power would lead to social and commercial progress. For his service during the war, Stevens received the 2nd class of the Order of the Sacred Treasure. Stevens later represented Japanese interests in Hawaii, traveling there twice in 1901 and 1902. In November of 1904, Stevens was appointed as an advisor to the Korean Foreign Office, a position strongly advocated by the Japanese government based on Horace Allen's 1901 recommendation. Despite repeated requests, Stevens declined to support the appointment of a Korean consul in Hawaii. Nevertheless, in 1905, Allen recommended Stevens to F.M. Schweinsey, president of the Hawaiian Sugar Planters Association, who was keen to resume Korean immigration to Hawaii. Although the Japanese government sought to block Korean immigration, Stevens initially entertained the idea and had several discussions with Schweinsey in Tokyo that year. However, Schweinsey's efforts ultimately failed. Later in 1905, Stevens publicly supported Japan's interest in restricting immigration to the United States, stating that Japan would welcome such legislation if implemented in a manner respectful of its dignity. He also expressed that Japan sought to redirect immigrants toward Korea or northeast China rather than Hawaii. While officially employed by the Joseon government, Stevens reportedly received significant payments from Japan to promote Japanese propaganda in the United States, according to South Korea's Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs. In early 1906, Stevens made a wager with Kiyuchi Jushiro, a Japanese official in Korea, regarding the timeline for Japan's annexation of Korea. Kiyuchi predicted it would occur within 3 years, while Stevens estimated 5 years, a prediction closer to reality, as the Japan-Korean Annexation Treaty was signed in mid-1910. However, Stevens would not live to see his forecast fulfilled. In March of 1908, Stevens returned to the United States to visit his family in Washington, D.C., and vacation with his sisters at their cottage in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Upon arriving, he gave an interview with a San Francisco newspaper in which he claimed that Korea's common people were benefiting from Japanese influence and protection. He also stated that Korea, in its current state, was unfit to be an independent nation. These remarks angered two Korean associations, the Daedong Bugukko and the Independence Club, which held a joint meeting and resolved to act against Stevens. On March 22, 1908, 4 Korean men chosen by the associations confronted Stevens at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. Their leader, Earl Lee, who spoke fluent English, asked if Stevens had made the statements reported in the newspaper and whether he believed the Japanese were killing Koreans. Stevens confirmed the first statement but denied the second, further asserting that Lee might not fully understand Korea's situation due to his time abroad. At this, the men attacked Stevens with chairs, knocking him down and causing him to hit his head on the marble floor. Though Stevens managed to back against a wall until help arrived, Lee reportedly expressed regret that he had not inflicted more harm. The following day, Jang In-hwan and Jeon Myonin, Korean immigrants to the U.S., targeted Stevens at the port of San Francisco as he prepared to board a ferry to Oakland. Jeon fired first but missed, then rushed Stevens and struck him in the face with his revolver. Jang, witnessing the struggle, fired into the melee, hitting Stevens twice in the back. Jeon was also injured in the confusion. A crowd gathered, some calling for the attackers to be lynched. Jang was arrested and charged with murder, while Jeon, after receiving medical treatment, was charged as an accessory. Both men expressed no remorse in interviews, labeling Stevens a traitor to Korea and accusing him of contributing to the deaths of thousands through his actions. Stevens sustained critical injuries, including a bullet wound to his lung and another to his groin. Initially, surgeons at St. Francis Hospital believed he might recover. On the day of the attack, Stevens issued a statement blaming a small band of student agitators in and around San Francisco who resented Japan's protectorate over Korea and held him partially responsible for the situation. However, his condition worsened on the morning of March 25th. Signs of inflammation prompted emergency surgery that evening, but Stevens never regained consciousness and died shortly after 11 p.m., with Japanese consul Chozo Kaioki at his bedside. Stevens was buried in Washington, D.C., following a funeral service at St. John's Episcopal Church.